I'm going to tell you today that your child has very good reasons for not wanting to share their things and that it's actually part of a very healthy development. That's what we're going to talk about today. For those who don't know me, my name is Danielle C. Baker. I am the founder and CBO of Being Connected, and I'm also a registered early childhood educator with over 20 years experience in the field. I help parents, educators, and teachers navigate the realities of what parenting is now. But don't get it twisted. When you work with me, we're putting the child's needs first. So we're going to have to put our pride and ego aside, and let's get to it. Hello, hello, hello. Welcome to the Talk to Danielle podcast. I am your host, Danielle C. Baker. And before we get started, be sure to like, follow, and subscribe to whichever channel you're listening or watching from. And of course, with season 2, this episode is brought to you by the Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy with the amazing Dr. Simone Alicia. There's a wealth of resources on that website to help with your child's confidence and self-esteem and so much more. So I'm going to add the link in the comments and in the description so you can have a look at that. It's really well worth your while. So we're going to jump right in today because that is a very reoccurring topic that I get with parents on their worries about their child not wanting to share. And we also get it in daycare settings in schools where the children just don't want to share the toys or whatever it is that they're using at that moment. Now, I have to say that we're talking, usually this is for younger children, of course. It is a very healthy part of their development. I'm going to tell you why in just a minute, but it's also I want you to kind of look at it in a way that it's the adults that are creating the issues. And I will explain in a little bit. So you just have to understand that naturally, children are not wanting to share. It has nothing to do with being selfish. It has nothing to do with manipulating people or getting attention originally. It's how we as adults are going to handle the situation, whether or not we're going to be teaching them how to use this to their advantage and become selfish. But to the core, not wanting to share is not a selfish act. And it is perfectly normal in their development. Now we're talking about young children, of course, right? So I will tell you that your child struggling to share, they have good reasons not to want to share. And I'm going to kind of tell you why they're struggling and how you can navigate that. So a lot of the times, like I said, the adults are causing the struggle. So we have a role to play in this, and how we handle it is going to determine whether or not your child's going to be able to grow out of that stage or not. Right? It's all up to us. It's all on us. So there's usually 4 main reasons. There's a lot more, but generally in the beginning, there are 4 main reasons why your child wouldn't want to share. And one of them being that we are focusing on the material, and it has nothing to do with the actual object that they don't want to share. I'm going to explain that a little bit later. It can feel unsettling for them. It could be the only way that they can get a sense of control of what's going on in their life. And sometimes our expectations of them sharing can be unrealistic. So that's what I mean by it's the way that the adults handle it that create the struggle when it comes to sharing. So we're going to start with the first one of focusing on the material. We see children, usually they don't want to share toys. So we're going to be talking about toys, okay, as examples for this episode. We see children playing with toys. So when another child wants to play with that same toy, we're just like, well, come on now, don't be selfish, give it to them. And this is a huge, huge, huge mistakes that adults do. We see children playing with toys as just playing, right? They're filling time. they're wasting time, or whatever it is, whichever way you want to look at it. But children learn through play. Playtime is how they learn. It's how they explore their environment, their world. It's how they can learn to problem solve. It's how they can learn to their critical thinking skills. So it's their learning time. So when they're actually playing, they're doing serious work. We're downplaying it. We're not taking it seriously. We're belittling them. We are mocking their intelligence. We are stunting their intelligence. We're stopping them from learning when we stop them from playing. So it is serious work for them. They are actually focused. When you watch your child play, they are focused on the toy. They are focused on the stories that they're telling each other. They're focused on what it is that they're creating. They are curious. They want to find out what happens if you roll the car down this ramp, or if you build a fort, how high can you get it to go, right? Those are some examples. And they are engaged with their play. So when we're talking about children that don't have much of an attention span now, we have to look back and say, how often have we allowed them to stay engaged in their play, in their learning time? And that kind of rolls up into one big topic that I will mention in a different episode. So this is one of the reasons that the mistake about sharing is we see it as they're just playing, they're just wasting time, right? They're bored and they're keeping themselves entertained. The mistake that we're doing is we're not realizing that this is how they're actually learning. They are working. So imagine if you are working on a deadline on a project at work, or some research that you're doing, and somebody keeps interrupting you to say, okay, well, let's say you work in a lab. You don't need the microscope right now. You're not doing anything really special with it. So I'm going to use it. Okay, this is an example of it. That's what we're doing to our children. So every time we're interrupting that and dictating what to do with their time, when their time is up, is actually unfair. So when we're telling them that their time is up, they can't play anymore, they can't learn anymore. When they're deep into their discovery and we're interrupting that, it's very unfair. And that's where the struggle begins. They don't want to let go of that toy because they're still learning. They're still curious about it. And why are we stopping that, right? So that's one of the reasons. Another one is it can be unsettling for them. It can make children very uncomfortable to see others use their things, right? Children tend to have a very strong sense of ownership and security for their toys or for their belongings. So when they see somebody using it, they're really not sure when and if they're ever going to get them back. They haven't learned that interaction yet, right? We're talking about young children here. They haven't learned the concept of I will get it back until they start getting it back, right? So there's a learning process there. So when we're taking that belonging from them, that gives them that sense of security, and it gives them a sense of identity. And we're taking that away from them. They're not sure when they're going to be getting back, even if you do tell them, in a couple of minutes. They don't know what a couple of minutes are, so they really don't understand if they're ever going to see their belongings again. So it can be very unsettling. It can create anxiety in children because you're taking away their things, right? That's one of the things. Is it is unsettling. We're focusing on the child that doesn't want to give their belongings. We have to understand that the children that want that toy need to learn to wait for their turn as well. So we'll put a lot of focus on the child that is supposedly not sharing, but there's a teachable moment for the child who wants that toy immediately, right? That happens a lot in school settings or between siblings. The other children need to learn to respect the fact that other people are using the equipment, the material, or whatever, the toys, and they need to wait their turn. When the person is done with it, then they can have a turn. Just like when they get to play with it, they're going to appreciate the fact that they get to play with it as long as they want to. All right. Now, again, talking about young children. So as they grow older, they will grow out of that, and it will automatically, the sharing part will become natural to them. There will be no more issues if we handle it in a healthy way, right? Another reason why your child may not want to share is because it gives them a sense of control. The only time they get to say no and have an impact on the adults is when they don't want to share, because it makes the adults very uncomfortable. Parents don't want to be judged that they're raising selfish children. Parents get embarrassed, or teachers get annoyed that the other children will cry because they're not getting the toy that they want because somebody else is using it. So children will learn very early on that they can control the adults because they have no control over their lives, right? So ask yourself, when does your parenting allow your child to say no? and be respected for it, right? When you ask your child to put on their shoes and they say no, you get upset. You're not respecting that, right? They might be saying no because their shoe hurt their feet, but you're going to disregard that and force that shoe on, right? It's just an example. So ask yourself, when does your parenting allow your child to say no and that you will respect it anytime in the day, right? They have no control over their day-to-day routine. So when they can say no to not sharing their belongings, that's when they feel like they have some kind of control over their lives. And again, as they grow older, they're going to let that go. That's not going to be an issue anymore. But at that time, that's the security that they need. That's the only time that they will feel like they're in control. So again, this is what I meant earlier. How we react will dictate whether or not this will become a selfish act or if it'll become a manipulation tactic, right? If you're resisting, if you're not respecting the boundaries, if you're not validating your child's right to play with their own belongings, this could then become a struggle for other reasons. Okay. The fourth reason would be that sharing sometimes can be unrealistic. So I will give you an example of that. Imagine if you had a coworker that would come up to you and say, okay, I'm going to be using your phone for the rest of the day. And your boss goes and say, well, you've been using your phone for quite a bit. So yeah, you should be passing it on. It's only fair that your coworker gets it for the rest of the day. This is what we're asking of the children. It's no different at all. So how would you react if somebody would ask to use your phone for the rest of the day and your boss would say, well, no, you have to. It's not negotiable. That's exactly what we're doing. So it's very unrealistic. What are we teaching our children? All right, of course, we're going to eventually teach them to be selfish because it's their stuff, right? It's their stuff. Why should they have to share it? Imagine if you had a friend or a family member go through your closet without you having a say in it and just pick out the clothes they want to wear for the day and you don't have a say in it. It's the same thing. It's not a realistic thing that we are asking or demanding our children to do. When that happens, if you think about it, you would think that it's very rude and it's unacceptable. So that's what you're doing to your child. That's what we're asking the children to do, and that's what we're expecting our children to do. And this is where it's very important to realize that is, how can your child learn to set boundaries if we keep disrespecting their boundaries when they're trying to set some boundaries, right? They don't want you to go through their clothes. They don't want you to, for you to take away their toys. They're telling you that they're not comfortable with it, and you're going to actually put guilt on them. You're going to blame them. So that we're teaching them that setting boundaries is bad and that you'll get in trouble for it. So what is it that you're teaching your child? That's what you have to ask. It's very, very important to be aware of what we're asking the child. Is it realistic? In a school setting, it's different. It's not their toys. So you can explain to the children, well, you like playing with this. I understand, but it's not yours, it's everybody's. Everybody here gets a turn. So you can talk about taking turns. But when it comes to their own personal things, it is important to set the expectations. So for children who bring their own toys to school or to the daycare, this is where it's important for the parents to tell their kids or the teachers to reinforce that and say, when you're at home, it's your stuff, but everything at school will probably need to be shared. Are you willing to share this, right? And this is why a lot of the times schools won't allow children to bring toys from home, because then they're stuck with that continuous conflict, where they say, well, this is mine. Okay, so let's keep it at home. If that's yours, then keep it at home. If this here is a community thing, so we need to share. But again, don't forget that as they grow older, they will understand that and they'll be willing to share without conflict. So it's just a phase and it's perfectly normal and healthy. part of the development if we handle it in a healthy way as well. So how do you handle it? How can you do this? How can you move away from creating these struggles when it comes to sharing and teaching your child a healthy way to share, right? There's a lot of learning involved with this. So instead of forcing the sharing, opt for taking turns instead. Okay, so go with, let's take turns. So if a child wants your child's toy, or if a sibling wants the toy, it is very important, like I said before, that the other child who wants that toy needs to learn to wait their turn, because they're going to want to have their turn and enjoy this toy, right? So we need to let them understand that, right, it's being used right now. Somebody's using it. So when they're done, you can have a turn. That's also a very healthy way to teach a child to wait their turn. And that we need to respect the fact that somebody's using it right now. Because when it's their turn to play with it, they're going to want people to respect that time. So opt for that option to say, okay, well, my child, this person, they're using it right now. When they're done with it, you can have a turn. And that's it. So now you're validating both children. The child that's using the toy doesn't have to get on the defensive because they have to give away their toy and their boundaries are being disrespected and they lose all control and they don't know if they're going to get it back. So they see that you have their back, that you're supporting them, that they're allowed to play with their own stuff, and that when they're done, the other child will have it. And the other child is learning that I cannot have everything that I want right away. It's perfectly healthy to wait. If your child is starting to use that as a game, then it's different. But this is not what we're talking about today. We're talking about the healthy part of the development. So opt for the turn, taking turns. Tell the child who wants the toy right away to say, listen, it's being used right now. When they're done, you can have it. And then you make sure that they have it, right? I mean, that's how you handle it. That's the only way you handle it. Effective way to handle it. So, respect your child's decision. That's going to help you get out of that phase a little quicker as well. When you validate the children's decision, then they're not going to learn that it can be used as manipulation. That's where you kind of stop that learning that you don't want them to learn. So children are very smart. So this is what I'm going to leave you with today. It's very short, but to the point. Just know that when children don't want to share, or originally, it is for valid reasons. When we look at it, not as adults who are very authoritative, but as adults who understand that the child is learning something right now and think, well, what if this was being done to me right now, right? When we're talking about the ego and the pride here, look at it as if somebody was demanding of me to give away my stuff. The neighbor says, okay, I'm going to be using your car for the rest of the weekend. I'm going on a trip. I don't want to use up my gas, so I'm using your car. And that somebody comes and says, stop being selfish, give them your car and make sure that the gas is full, the tank is full of gas, right? So that's exactly what's happening when we're demanding that of our children. So that's what it is when it comes to your struggles with your child. Not sharing gives you a different perspective of what that could be. And really wasn't fair for you when you were a child. Let's change that so your child has feel like they're in a little bit of control of their lives. So if you have any questions, if you want more details, you can definitely reach out. I can give you a whole lot of other resources on it. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and follow whichever channel you're listening and watching from. And don't forget to have a look at the Self-Esteem Doctor Online Academy for more resources. It's just amazing stuff to look at there. I will leave you with that. Until next time, stay safe, stay awesome, and we'll talk soon.